Angel, your presentation is titled Government Contract Property Closeout Considerations. How does the company's policies and procedures tie into closeout considerations?
Very closely. So to borrow what Ivonne mentioned earlier, I think 2, 3 questions ago, but policies and procedures, more specifically in this case, procedures, serve as a roadmap for how a task is done, and essentially help you understand how an overall element, outcome, a process is being administered. So how we're doing the actual business. So by whenever we think about contract closeout and considerations and how is that performed, company A may do it differently than company B, than company C, than company 4. Like every company will be a little bit different, and you could borrow from those experiences because, as many of us are aware, we are in a everlasting war of attrition and also in a war of retention. We're trying to attract new talent. We're trying to retain talent, but oftentimes people may, luckily, hopefully, they will continue to climb through the ladder of their career ascension, however they define that. In some cases, that means that they have to go from one company to another company, and they may take some of that great knowledge that they have, or somebody will come in. We'll have a brand new employee that will come in with some great information that, it may be time, instead of having that person conform to the way that we've been doing a process, we may be able to borrow their idea. Hey, new guy, this is how we do this. What do you think about this? And that person may bring some great insight. As it comes to contract closeout, and specifically for the Department of Defense, but this can be applied a host of different organizations. When you're thinking about closing out a project, a task order, something having to do with whatever the deliverable is, whenever you're closing that element out, whatever work you're doing for the customer, you need to have a way. And I'll stick to defense contracting because that's essentially my area of expertise. But what we're looking at when it comes to policies and procedures is, how does the company investigate whether a contract is ready to be closed out for property administration? Are they performing inventories at the end of the cycle? Are they asking for an inventory waiver? Do they just forget about the property that's sitting there that nobody has looked at, that's on the back shelf on the last aisle, and maybe the records didn't catch it up? So policies and procedures could detail all of those. The process part of it, of how do you actually go in and you pull it, and you pull your review, and you do some extra screening reviews, which is somewhat highly tied to contract closeout, to the policy. Okay, well, we're going to do an inventory every year. We're going to go ahead, and as part of what we do in this company is we are going to look at anything that has been sitting idle for X number of years, and then when we find X amount of property, we're going to submit it for disposition instruction. We're going to see if there's any other value that we could get out of this property. If we notice that the policies do not cover or touch on something, it's not going to get done. Or you're relying on the old fogey Angel Rosario that's been here for 30 years because he remembers to do it on the 15th of the month. But when that person retires, nobody's going to remember to go back and look at it. But if you have it in your procedures, desk instructions, if you have it in your policy, if you have it somewhere, then you get assured that at least somebody at some point is going to look at it and say, oh, aren't we supposed to do this? What does this mean? And that's how I believe for contract closeout considerations, the topics of performing an inventory, being notified from the contract department or the sales, whoever does the business development, somebody will say, this is delivered complete. Do we have anything left over? Oftentimes what I see as a challenge is that organization, that part of the company, will not relay that information to the property custodians, and then they'll have something on the records that they probably shouldn't have had in the records. But a policy and procedure, if you have that in there, then you'll be able to at least know that there's a trigger or a checkbox like, hey, we didn't check for this. We need to check for this element right here. Do we have anything left over? Did we walk over to the different aisles and make sure that there's no property remaining? So that's to me, that's the impact for some of the considerations for property closeouts.
There's a lot more to closeouts than one would think, right?
Exactly.
A lot more. It's a life cycle process that doesn't begin at the end. It begins the moment the property comes in. You have to have a plan on how are you going to get rid of it, whatever is left over.
Exactly.
Joe, in terms of closeout, let me just offer a couple of slightly additional perspectives, and that is from a university and nonprofit perspective, right? One of our big challenges is making sure that we are clear on who holds title to that equipment at any point in time, or that property. We tend to use the terminology equipment versus property. Same thing, different label. But those are some of the challenges we face, the different types of funding sources from which that equipment was acquired. Was it on a federal contract, a grant, a cooperative agreement, a consortium, a donation, all different? Was it jointly funded by various different sources? So all of those things come into play. And one of the big things for us is making sure that the faculty identify potential reuse options for that, whatever is remaining. Because it's a little different than in the commercial contracting world, but it doesn't make it any less complex, right? Or challenging. But closeout, I think, is a great time at which we really need to partner with program personnel, warehousing personnel, contracts, your government representative that you're working with. So it really becomes a team effort, if you will. So.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, in fact, the next question, I think we're going to touch already. Pulling that through a little bit more, what are the common challenges that arise during government property closeout, and how can they be mitigated for our listeners?
I think maybe one of the key things, and Angel, you may have mentioned this already, is having a mechanism to know when it's time to actively work a contract closeout. And I'll use a term a little more generically, even agreement or award, or I think I tend to use the word agreement generically for all types of contracts, right? Because they each bring with them their own challenges. But a big part of that is knowing, what do you have open? When is it due to close, right? Who do you have to work with? Who do you have to partner with to take care of all the different transactions that you have to do? So lots to it, right. But having the checklist of, hey, at a minimum, these are the things I have to be sure that I've done or that somebody's done, right, is really essential.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest takeaway. If you had to ask me for one challenge for contract closeout, that's essentially that's the number one challenge that comes up to my mind is, does the company have an established process for initiating the completion of physical inventories to figure out what is accountable, what is left over on the award or the contract? Because we need to evaluate it for all the mentions that Ivonne just mentioned. And the why, if you ask the why as to why does it matter, like who cares that, if you do a physical inventory at the end, or if you're not able to find an alternate use for this, the reason for it from a corporate or from an organizational standpoint is, what would happen if we retain something that we don't have title to? Now you may have to owe some money to someone. So that's a challenge. You're averting risk by being able to at least quickly identifying it and closing it out, whatever closeout means in your organization. But on top of that is, if you retain assets in your inventory that are no longer needed for the contract execution or the award, or for whatever the end goal is for the organization. Just think of our own homes. If we keep old shoes and old boots and old equipment in our garage, it will be stockpiled before you know it, right? In a matter of a couple of months or years, you'll be like, hey man, I have a lot of stuff that I need to get rid of. I need to do a little bit of a spring cleaning. So you're administering, you're increasing the cost to administer, to retain, to hold, to inventory, to maintain security of that property or those assets, whatever those assets are at your organization. And by explaining what are the challenges, or why we're doing this, why are we so emphatic, and why are we so passionate about making sure that we're getting rid of things? When I say get rid of things, I mean finding a new home for it, finding a new use for it. Why are we so focused on ensuring that we're getting rid of things in a quick manner? The reason for that is because we want to make sure that we save money. There's we could reduce the overhead costs of administering it, keeping a record, performing the inventory, and all these different things. Another challenge of closeout is what Ivonne mentioned as well, is the program office and that relationship that is super critical, especially at the end. It should be all throughout. But a program office not notifying the custodians that something is left, or seeing a spreadsheet that says, oh yeah, that program, that contract has 50 line items, quantity of 20. It's not that big of a deal. And then the custodian may say, yeah, you may not think so, but each one of these units is the size of a generator. It measures 20 by 20. It's taking up 2% or 15% of our warehouse space. And by being able to have that relationship with the different stakeholders, you're able to figure out, like, okay, what's the impact of this, and what will we do? How could we save money, gain space? What's the return of investment that we could provide if we're able to get rid of this stuff? So that's kind of like the why. Why do we do what we're doing? And by not clearly articulating that, essentially it cheats us as property professionals, because we're not able to showcase the value that we're bringing to the office or to the organization.
Mm-hmm. It's part of the stewardship, right? The stewardship, yes. We are accountable and responsible to others, because those monies came from other sources. It's not our own personal checking account, although we're responsible for that too. But I think we are accountable to others, and we are trusted with those assets to do what we're supposed to be doing.
And as taxpayer dollars, it belongs to us. So we want to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck, because I get taxed. For anybody watching this after the fact, tax season is coming to an end fairly soon. So tax. So for us to have to pay a little bit of taxes, we kind of are very cognizant of, hey, we don't want our money wasted, especially if we're paying so much money for taxes.
Yes, that is a very sobering reality.
Yeah, and it looks like it affects multiple industries. Defense contracting, on the DCMA audit side of that, and then also education, higher learning, universities. It feels like all affected. So that's really good to hear that there's common themes, and there's ways to approach each of them, right? So thanks for sharing, Dean. I think we have another question here. From a leadership perspective, what are the biggest challenges leaders face in physical asset management? How can they be overcome?
The $1 million question, Angel. Biggest challenges. Wow, that opens up all kinds of avenues that we could follow. I'll take that from a very general perspective. I think at this point is one of the challenges, and it's on the part of senior management or leadership, as well as the part of the property personnel, right? And that is seeing ourselves, appreciating ourselves, touting ourselves, if you will, in a reasonable way, that we're an essential function for the university. We're part of their risk management portfolio within an organization. When companies are assessed for being a potential government contractor, the property management system is one of the key systems, business systems, that is looked at in terms of how efficiently you work. So many different challenges, but I would say a lot of it too is just, the everyday understanding and appreciation and link of what we do to efficiency and property management within an organization.
Absolutely. That's the $1 million question. Yeah, it's a very tough question, but it's a great question. I would say for leadership, some of the biggest challenges, the one that immediately came to my head was allocation of resources, because everybody's fighting for every dollar that we get, whether it be at a university, or it's a defense contractor, or Joe's bait and tackle shop. No matter what it is, there's always a challenge to have enough resources. If you just have, there's a thought that if you had enough resources, then you'll climb the next step. And in defense contracting, for us, we're always trying to do more with less. But what I found is most of the time, more money doesn't always provide the answer. So where I see the biggest challenge in leadership, some of the biggest challenges that I noticed in leadership is failing to showcase, to Ivonne's point, failing to showcase our return of investment. So how for most organizations, Asset management is an overhead organization. We are cost. We're just deferring. We're safeguarding. We're avoiding risk, deferring risk, making sure that taking measured risks, and we're not essentially bringing a lot of money back to the deliverable. But if we actually are able to articulate and be our biggest cheerleaders, to a point, right? We have to do it, in a responsible manner. But if we're able to showcase exactly how we're saving the money, if we're able to repurpose an equipment that, we no longer need it in this lab, but we may be able to use it here, or they may be able to use it in the robotics lab, or they may be able to use it in this other program, or we reach out to another organization, that another university, for example, that may use it, or nonprofit. There's a lot of different ways that we're able to showcase how, if we repurpose something, what cost savings we made. And that's essentially what senior leaders, and when I say senior leaders, now I'm talking about organizational leadership and the corporate folks, the people that care about the checkbooks and the money and that type of stuff, like the ones that are giving us our money. This is how we're able to articulate to them, speaking in the language of what they care about, which is, they may have stakeholders, they may have, a board of directors, and they have to show that they're making a profit, whether they're nonprofit or whatever. They have to show a certain value that they're getting out of our organization. And as proper administrators, that's one of the areas I believe that we could overcome that challenge of not having resources by showcasing how much value we're bringing back to them, whether it be by repurposing something. If we save space and we disposition a whole bunch of excess, obsolete property, assets, equipment, whatever, that's no longer needed, we were able to free up 50,000 square feet. Well, what does that equate to? If you talk to your warehouse manager, they'll know how much each square foot costs to administer. And, you're able to articulate, okay, this is how much money potential savings we had based on clearing X, Y, and Z, just by taking all this stuff from this location to the other one, or we no longer have to buy it because we were able to modify these over here. So as far as challenge for leadership is articulating our return of investment, us being our own cheerleader and being able to showcase, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we bring to the table, and that will essentially provide a lot of great feedback that will be our biggest advocate. So whenever we say, we need to hire another person to help out with, we need more resources, whatever the resources are. We need another X, Y, and Z for this. And because if we don't, we're not able to do this, this, and this. Or because if we do, we're able to expedite this, be much quicker, be much faster, do it at a lower cost. Those are the type of things that we could do a better job at. Which will help overcome the challenges of leadership the leadership has with physical asset management.
Mm-hmm. I think being problem solvers, being proactive, trying to anticipate things based on experience and trends that we have seen, but overall staying in communication with those that need to know, having information available that is valuable and useful from their perspective, not just from our perspective, but from their perspective.
Thanks for sharing. I can't wait to check out the presentations myself. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to share? Ivonne, do you want to go first?
I would just say stay tuned, because in this profession, in this career, there is always something new to learn, whether you are a novice, brand new to property, brand new to NPMA. It never ceases to surprise me, the new challenges that come up. Maybe not daily or hourly, although sometimes it feels that way, but certainly with enough regularity that it keeps you on your toes. So hopefully we'll be able to share some additional details and insight, and also learn from those of you that are attending. So I really look forward to that session.
Amen to that. And yes, I echo those sentiments, hopefully not daily, but it seems to be that more often than not is more daily challenges than anything else. But it's okay. Being a problem solver is fantastic, because you get to learn. If you have an inquisitive mind, being a problem solver is pretty good in this profession. I'm really excited about this opportunity to present on the 19th, so I look forward to seeing. And also to Yvonne's point, I would love to continue the discussions with our panel, with the panelists, and with everybody that is joining, because that's where we get to learn quite a lot about different topics or different vantage points that we had not even considered. So I'm looking forward to that. During my presentation, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ms. Alicia Henderson from DCMA and also Mr. Daryl Friddle. He's from NASA, and we're going to be talking about contract closeouts and some of the considerations of how to have a fantastic closeout program. And then as part of the leadership presentation, I'm doing that one as well. And that presentation, I'm super excited to talk with the participants and touch on opportunities to lead within our profession, whether it be within our organization, within NPMA itself, or within your own community. So if you're not a defense contractor and you're an NPMA member and you're thinking, oh, how could I what are some of the opportunities that I could take within the chapter level or the national level? What are some of the different committees that I could be a part of? Or perhaps, I'm full of a lot of volunteer opportunities within NPMA, but I want to do something in my local community. Well, we're going to talk about some of those opportunities and how you could use some of those same soft skills, which are sometimes the hard skills, use some of those soft skills to help us navigate and sharpen our leadership skills. So that's what I'm most excited about. Those are that's my pitch. Please come, and looking forward to seeing you guys during the presentation.
Thank you, Joe, for having us
Awesome.
and asking us these questions. We look forward to the 19th.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rosario and Ms. Thatcher. This has been great, thing. And I'm glad you mentioned Alicia and Daryl. I also want to put a plug out there for Tom Ruckdashel. He will also be presenting on the DFAR's consolidation final rule we described earlier in the beginning. He has updated revised slides. And of course, I'll be presenting a presentation on the value of property custodians myself. I want to thank you to both of you for sharing your insights and your time today. I can't wait for the virtual day of learning. A big thank you to all of our viewers. If you'd like to learn more about this and other upcoming training opportunities, please check us out at npma.org or check out the National Park Management Association on LinkedIn. Registration link and my contact information will be posted below. Thank you again. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic one.
Thank you.
Great cut.